Well, hey, everybody. You know what time it is? Mark, do you know what time it is?
I think it's time for the Recruiter of Oz. Ooh.
Yes. It's that weekly adventure that you join us on where we talk about everything working with recruiters and sourcers and even a few extra things in there that may help you out as job seekers. So it's interesting the way we kind of come up with these topics. Mark or I will come forward and say, okay, let's do something about this. And then we'll spend, a week ahead of time and taking notes on each piece of what that topic could be and diving into different rabbit holes. Funny though, sometimes those don't happen that way. And today I'm seeing a suggestion for the first time that Mark put together. And it's focusing on the job application process itself. So we're going to kind of fly by the seat of our pants. I mean, I would be lying to say we weren't flying by the seat of our pants in many situations, but we're going to fly by the seat of our pants for reals today, yo. And we're going to dive headlong into this. Mark, how do you want to start?
Well, I think we can kind of go like chronologically. I mean, we know that it's a tough market out there right now.
Yeah.
And kind of like the first thing that you're going to see, unless you're doing some of the sourcing for jobs that we talked about in the previous episodes, where you do a search string in Google and then you search the ATS systems directly of the companies that you are looking to target. That way works fine. But I think a lot of you are probably looking at like LinkedIn jobs, right?
Yes.
Or maybe Indeed. So I'm going to talk about kind of like those first steps when you're looking at roles. Cool. You get ones that are like, highly promoted or highly advertised. I mean,
right.
Take
actively recruiting.
Yeah, actively recruiting. You take that with a grain of salt, for sure.
So explain that, because I mean, I know I get excited when I see actively recruiting. That means people are actually looking and they're waiting with bated breath on the other side for those resumes to come through so they can just dig into them, baring their teeth and just really enthusiastic, right? That's what happens, isn't it?
Well, theoretically, yes. But we've talked about this before. When you go to LinkedIn and it says, there have been 1,000 people that have applied to this job or whatever the numbers are. Those are not the actual applicants. We've mentioned this before. We've posted articles about it, but those are the people that have looked at the role and probably looked at the role when it was about 100 applicants and thought, oh, I'm not going to do that. And then the next 101st guy comes and looks and says, oh yeah, I'm not going to apply. That's too many. And this happens all the way until like 1,000. So there is no definite number, but from what we can estimate, it's about 10 to 20% are real applicants out of that bunch.
Really? That strikes me as odd, since I would think that LinkedIn's algorithm should be able to detect whether someone at least clicked the apply button, right?
Yeah, well, no, they can't. Well, yes, they can, but only if you go back. So if you apply to a job, you get taken to an external site, because it's not like LinkedIn is like somehow connected with the ATS systems of all these companies. There's no way that would happen. So what happens is you click on that role, instantly it pops up another window. And then if you go back to the LinkedIn page, it says, did you apply for this job? And it's a yes or no little question. Sure. So you choose yes or no. So LinkedIn is tracking if you've like clicked on those or if you answer yes or no. If you answer yes, then it does like a little bit more and it kind of like tries to like track like the process of this job. And it's not like it's going to really track anything for you. The most it'll tell you is like maybe this job is closed, but you'll have found out before that when the company auto rejects you. So
interesting.
It's not that useful.
Well, so the other thing is, though, I've only seen that selection like 3 times, and I've applied to well over 100 positions at this point on LinkedIn. Did you apply to this job? So that's odd. It also strikes me as odd that they wouldn't at least detect when someone clicks apply. At that point, it really wouldn't matter to me if they'd actually applied, but it would seem that data set would be a little more clean with regard to the chances that the people who clicked on that apply button have actually applied for the role. No?
Yeah, I don't know if it's I think they won't say, of course, but it's a mix of somehow either like eyeballs on the actual post
Yeah.
with the people that do the apply thing. I mean, they're trying to up the numbers. So I think that's
that's like me having, 7,000 impressions on a post, but only like 3 people responding.
Exactly.
Go LinkedIn. Woohoo.
Yeah. So that's one thing. So you're doing all this job searching. You see this job. Tons of people have already applied. You still apply. And also going back to some of the posts that we've talked about in previous episodes, when you apply, you don't just apply. You do your due diligence of like networking, finding out about the company culture, like what it's like working there, connect with other people who are kind of like either like coworkers or maybe even hiring managers, trying to get an idea of as much as you can.
Though not necessarily in that order, right? Because I would generally try to reach out to people ahead of time, understand at least the high level reviews, kind of extrapolate from review sites on what the culture of that company is like, what the benefits, what the salary, what, if there are major issues that stand out. Obviously, as we've spoken about in past podcasts, you have to take those kind of reviews with a grain of salt, especially places like Glassdoor, where you may have someone review bombing a company because a group of people got laid off and they're really pissed off that they got laid off. So again, take those with a grain of salt. But generally, when you have a lot of reviews for a company, you can kind of average out and extrapolate what that real sentiment is.
Yeah. I mean, never mind, I guess, the fact that companies do have like their marketers who their job is to actually just up the score on, Glassdoor. So again, that's a separate thing. But okay, so here's the next part of it. You look at a job, you're like, wow, this job looks familiar.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know what? I think I applied to this job like a month ago and it closed. And why is this job back open again? So
why is it open again, Mark?
So there's a whole list of reasons. One, they didn't find the right person for the job. They got to a certain point. They thought they had enough people in like the on-site interview process. So they went through the recruiter screen, hiring manager screen. They get to the on-site and then everybody like just implodes, right? They fizzle out. They're not that good. They're not the right fit, whatever the reason. Or maybe they get somebody who gets all the way to the offer process. They say yes. And then the person fails the background check.
Oh.
Now they're screwed because now they have to reopen the rec and then post again. So that's why you see these recs opening up again for the same roles, because they're probably the same role.
I've seen it a few times, actually. I've had 5 months between the time I applied and it was closed and then reopened again. But I think as a job seeker, my question to you as recruiter/sourcer is, okay, if you applied to this before, but you were either ATS'd out or you just didn't receive a response, do you apply again?
You could try, but if you use the same like information, the system will just say that you've already applied to this job.
So that's like the definition of insanity, doing the same thing and hoping for different results. Okay, yeah, I got you.
Exactly. So that brings us to what that ATS system is actually doing. So for one, we've talked about this before. I think it's posted all over LinkedIn with by some of my friends as well as people in the industry. The ATS system is not rejecting you. You're being rejected by a human. So
I still have trouble swallowing that, by the way, because I think you've also had experiences, Mark, in the past, 4 months where you send in a resume and all of a sudden 30 minutes later, you've got a rejection. Well, that to me kind of strikes, odd.
They're just quick on the draw.
I guess.
So what happens is you apply your application resume. It's in the ATS system.
Right.
The resume screener or sourcer or recruiter or whoever's on the other end, they have to go through that stuff. Like it's part of their job. And most companies, like I've said this before, they are measured against looking at all of those and then doing something with them.
Okay.
So they'll look at all of them. They'll be like, nope, 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 nope. And then they'll be like, mass rejection.
Okay. So stupid rabbit hole question for me. Are you referring mostly to internal recruiters and sources, which I'm assuming you are, or are you also incorporating agencies? Because obviously the agencies are going to be basing their performance on how many candidates they can place.
Both, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because even on an agency role, they're working on client roles now. An agency recruiter probably has many more clients and a wider variety of positions. So when they look at you, they might say like, okay, they're applying for this role and they're not a fit, but I have a role with this company and they might actually be a fit. So that does happen. There's a greater chance of that happening and a less chance of that happening on the corporate side. When you're on the corporate side, you're probably, if it's a large enough company, you're probably working in a group and only working on a certain set of positions. And if you're a recruiter at a startup, you have a certain set of positions, but it's like you need one product marketing manager, you need one, head of legal, you need one like engineering director. It's like you only have a couple of roles. So that's kind of how I see it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So then that brings us to the ATS system. So ATS systems, like nobody is happy with ATS systems completely. If they
mean there are people that are happy with ATS systems at all?
I mean, they may say so, but they may just be on the sales team of whatever ATS software that is. So ATS systems, some of them are pretty nice to use in terms if you're like a sourcer or recruiter. For candidates, there are some that are better than others. It kind of goes like the whole gamut of ease of use when it comes to applying.
Which ones, Mark? I mean, do you want to name names?
I mean, I don't want to name names, but there are some of the good ones will be the ones where it's like a single click apply with your LinkedIn profile. Awesome, right?
But then let's just briefly discuss the fallback of that, right? Because you get more applicants and you get a lot of people who aren't necessarily as concerned with tailoring their resume to a particular position. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, but they would do that anyways, even if it was like a resume. I mean, if anything, a resume can make it, at least on the surface, look better because they might have like a couple different versions of their resume and then they just kind of like apply to the one. With LinkedIn, of course, you would have to maybe, I don't know, change your LinkedIn profile occasionally. Right. So that doesn't work as well. So the ease of use for the easy apply with LinkedIn, that's good. Or certain ATS systems, like, I don't know, like Greenhouse, that's like a pretty easy application. You just upload your resume, a couple of other extra lines, and then you hit send and that's it. Right. So those are the good ones. Now, the bad ones will be the ones that you upload your resume and then you have to enter manually every single step of your job history. Yes. And not only do you have to enter it, but it like parses out your resume completely
incorrectly. Yes.
So that is a thing. So with resume formats, that will affect the ease of your parsing. So there's something I want to say about that as well. Okay. Make your resume format easily digestible in terms of text. Like don't get cute with like a bunch of like weird tables and stuff like that to where the ATS system could have trouble placing the information in the system. So it'll mess them up.
Right. Okay. Well, that's my other question. And it's a question I shouldn't ask because it's going to make me look very bad potentially. But if you screw up and you try to stump an ATS system, are you automatically rejected, or do they put it through because there's that level of maybe?
When you say stump, what do we mean?
If you make it so an ATS has difficulty parsing the information and finding specific...
then they'll just ask you to enter it in manually, probably.
Lord. Okay.
So if you want to make it easy on yourself, make sure your resume or CV is in like a text format, Microsoft Doc, a PDF with text, as long as it was maybe like originally a doc and then you saved it as a PDF, and as long as you're saving it as text, a rich text format document or a plain text document, those all work. The worst one you could do is, I wish I've seen this, and it's just ridiculously annoying. And I know other
picture
recruiters,
formats.
Yes, other recruiters and sourcers can share my pain here. They take a image of their resume or CV and then put it in a PDF and then send it.
Oh, so the OCRs can't pick that out of an image?
Yes.
But okay, I was going to ask you about this.
Well, actually, no. So technically, they can OCR it, but if it's just an image, if that ATS system software doesn't have the OCR capability for images, then that can be a problem. Okay,
let's take this to kind of an adjacent question. When you said images, I was thinking, or when I said images, I was thinking, say, a creative person who is on a design team is submitting a resume. A lot of those resumes that I've seen from creatives kind of highlight their ability to create something graphically appealing. So
Yes.
a lot of what they're relying on is the graphic nature of that resume. So the graphical nature of that resume. Graphic? No, probably not. But
the graphic.
How are those resumes dealt with?
So those ones, I mean, they're going to be okay. I mean, it just depends on the format. So as long as like on the resume, it's like, the blurb about you, and then work experience, and then like company, time, title, and then description. As long as that's is like identifiable, then you're fine. It gets dicier when you decide to get cute and you have like a resume, but then it's got these bubbles all over it, and then each bubble is a job, because like, okay, well then can it figure out the parsing on that, or is it going to mess it up? Or if you have like, let's say you worked at a company for like 10 years and you had multiple titles in it, with like time frames for each of those titles. When the system parses it in, which one is it going to grab? Sometimes it grabs like
all of them. Sometimes.
Or none of them. Like it can't figure out which one to grab. So it makes it easier when you just make it easier for the system to parse in your information.
So when are we going to have ChatGTP, going through data sets as it parses information into the ATS? So, hopefully it'll make it easier and more clean.
Yeah. I mean, that's something we could do now. I mean, you could take your resume right now and, put it in ChatGPT and say, hey, can you rewrite this to make it look, more professional, or make it look, more, make it look shorter, or make it whatever it is. So make it look more professional. Highlight my abilities as XYZ versus this. So you can do that now. Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking about using ChatGTP as part of the ATS system to better parse information based on a large AI data set.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of ATS systems already claim they have like the AI sourcing component, which ties into that. So I mean, whether that's true or not, that's a debatable thing. So yeah. So you're trying to put in your CV. And again, we already talked about this in a previous episode. Besides having the space for the resume, the next line after that, you see, you can also upload your cover letter. What do you do?
Well, Mark, if we go back to the probably 3 or 4 episodes that we have somehow mentioned this particular point in, I am now not doing a cover letter for most jobs, but there are some jobs that specifically ask for a cover letter to help kind of differentiate and articulate the information that's in your resume. Those I will do a cover letter on. The question I have for you is, when you have a situation not where there's an upload place, but do you have further comments and they give you a text box? That to me says, boy, that's a cover letter just waiting to happen. So what do you do about that?
So I think that might be worth something if you feel it. So if you feel it to be so. So
yeah, okay.
If for some reason you think, hey, you know what, this may not exist on my profile, but I do have experience in, and you add like a couple more sentences, that could be like some information that you're trying to get to the hiring team.
That's what I do. And so so if I feel it to be so these are not the droids you're looking for.
Exactly.
I feel it to be so. Okay, cool.
So that's like a huge thing. So as you go down the application process, then you start to get into links to your social media profiles.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this, because I only do LinkedIn for this, and I don't do GitHub, I don't do Twitter, I don't do Facebook. Because first of all, in my opinion, I understand that jobs are going to try to look for your social media, but my name is common, and I'm not going to provide that information. I mean, I'm not outlandish on my Facebook or any of my social medias, but really, that seems to me to be a little intrusive.
Yeah, so I think the rule of thumb should be this: if it's not your job, if it's not like part of your job, if it doesn't showcase your abilities. Now, there are some people who have like a personal website, and maybe they're like a brand marketing manager, or maybe they're like a UX designer. Well, then send them to your personal site, because that's where you showcase all of your stuff.
Right.
But if it's like, if your personal website is like your band, then yeah, no, you probably don't need to show it to the employer.
Right.
So really only put in the stuff that is going to tie in directly with your job.
Cool. Then that's kind of tracking to what I do.
Yeah, for sure. So, and also with, like we said, with the cover letter thing too, as a recruiter on the other side, for all the applications that I've gone through on the other side, looking at people who are applying for jobs, I have deleted every single cover letter and not looked at it. Just so you know.
Does that make you an anomaly, or did Jessie also say she deleted those?
I mean, I would imagine so. I mean, I don't know anyone who looks at them, but yeah.
And folks, by Jessie, I'm referring to Ms. Jessie Lane. She is jlanecareercoaching.com. She's joined us on a couple of episodes. And
Yes.
If you're looking to work with a career coach, definitely hit her up. She's outstanding.
Yes. So you've gotten past the actual uploading the resume, it's parsing, or you think it's parsing. And then you get to some questions at the end. And these ones are kind of important to talk about because there are questions where they're asking you, hey, what's your what's your race? Do you identify as male or female or prefer not to say? Do you have have you ever had a disability before? How old are you?
So we're going to need to dig into this because I have experienced this to an extreme lately. I had a conversation with my wife about this, and basically she said she just selects not disclose on most of the information. But she also made a comment that do companies get kickbacks for hiring specific demographics or specific classes of people who may be protected, or how does that work? Is that why they ask those questions?
No. So they're asking those questions because they're trying to show proof that they have like a fair hiring process, right?
Okay.
So now here's the thing though. Legally, they can't ask those questions. Like you can't, as you're having people go through the process of applying for a job.
Yeah.
You can't ask them their age. You can't ask them their race. You can ask them where they're from. You can't ask them if they have any disabilities. You can't ask them their age. The only thing you can ask with age is if they can show proof of being 18 or older to work.
Okay, so that was the problem I had in this most recent job posting that I submitted for, and I was pretty stoked about it because it looked really interesting. But they said, what age range do you fall into? And here's 5-year increments. I'm like, not even going to answer that. I'm sorry.
You can skip it. Now, if they made it somehow a requirement in their application process, then they can get in trouble. But again, somewhere on that page, there's probably some fine print to where it's like, oh, this is an optional thing. You don't have to do it. Or some verbiage like that. But they can't make it a requirement.
Well, they did, but they also said they offered prefer not to disclose as one of the selections.
Oh,
so
okay.
that exonerates them, I think.
Yeah, and then it's something they're doing. They're doing it a lot now. And another question is about your visa status.
Yes.
So we see this a lot, especially in the tech industry. So you can't technically ask if somebody is a citizen.
Right.
I don't think. So the way you ask it is if you can work for any employer in this country without sponsorship.
Yeah.
That's the way the way you can ask it. Or will you require sponsorship? So that's the way they kind of figure out like if you are a citizen or have a green card versus not. And then also it takes it a step further because there are some jobs, especially, if you're in like, government military-based jobs. Yeah. So then they'll say, okay, well, if you apply for this job, can you get
trying to figure out if you've had any convictions?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like they can ask all the questions to kind of get to those same answers, but that's why they're asking those questions. Okay.
And it's interesting. So you've brought up a number of questions that I look at as table stakes these days. And it's just like, oh, okay, I gotta put in the EEO, or what is it? The equal
EEOC, yeah.
EEOC information. And I don't even think about it. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm this, and this, and this. The only time it finally gave me pause was that age range. I'm like, no, you don't need to know my age range. In fact, I'm going to go take the earliest 2 jobs off of my LinkedIn just because. But okay, it makes more sense now. But Are there other pieces that you think you should call out on this before we do a summary on that part?
The one more item, which I don't see on any job applications, but we used to ask it in the agency side.
Yeah.
Was have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Is that not legal?
It's illegal to ask if you've ever been arrested.
What? Oh, because arrested, you weren't necessarily convicted. And
exactly.
That can reflect badly and create an incorrect negative perception of the candidate.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I understand. All right. So, Mark, if you are able, which I'm sure you are because you're pretty on top of it most days.
Most days.
Well, I mean, I'm giving you a little bit of leeway there. Can you list out, and I'm going to go ahead and do probably some kind of graphic here to show the different EEOC statements that are actually illegal, that you don't have to answer. You can answer prefer to disclose or skip.
Oh, there's there's besides this. I mean, you can, companies when they're hiring, they can't ask somebody if they're going to have a baby.
No, of course not.
Yeah, right.
So start off at the beginning then, and just list them one by one, just so we can.
So you can't ask what is your race?
Mm-hmm.
Right. You can't ask if you have any disabilities.
Right.
You can't, even if you're interviewing them and you see that they're in a wheelchair, you can't ask them anything about that. The only thing you can ask is if they can do the job with or without reasonable accommodations. You have the job description in front of them, and you have to ask everybody that same question. You can't just ask the one guy in the wheelchair.
No, of course not.
You have to ask every single person. Language is spoken.
Yeah.
If somebody speaks a language, you have to ask all of the applicants, and the language, being fluent in that language has to apply to the job that they're looking at.
I find that one interesting because isn't it almost a given for the most part if someone's applying for a job in a certain language that they probably speak that language?
Well, no. Jobs where they're required to bilingual or something that. Yeah. So there's that. Age. You can't ask anything regards to age except can you provide proof that you're 18 or over? That's the only thing you can ask. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? That's what you can ask. You can't ask if they've been arrested. Mm-hmm. And then visa status. Okay. You can't just say what's your visa status? You have to say, are you able to work in this country for any employer? Do you require sponsorship to work for somebody in this country? Okay.
So the way around that, I mean, for them to be able to ask those questions legally, though it be in a gray area, it sounds like, is that they can make it a non-mandatory question, or you have a selection of prefer not to disclose.
Exactly.
Now, the question that I have is, if you prefer not to disclose most of those, does that ignite some unconscious bias on the recruiter/sourcer side and get them all indignant about, well, this person's being secretive about stuff?
I mean, at least on the roles that I've worked on the inside, I mean, the first thing I look at is the person's resume. That's the first thing. I really don't look at the other stuff and then say, oh, well, they answered, this question, as a prefer not to say. I forget their resume, right? The first thing I'm gonna look at is their resume, because that's the key thing that's gonna help me make my next decision.
Right. I know it's not your cover letter. I mean, I was thinking, the first thing, it's the resume for Mark, because the cover letter doesn't mean anything. Sorry, I couldn't resist that.
So, okay. So now that you've survived those questions, at the end of some applications, I have seen this where they ask for your referrals up front.
Now? Now? I've not had that.
I've seen that a couple of different times for certain ATS systems or jobs. And that one is weird, because basically what they're saying is, hey, can you give us referrals of other people who actually might be good, who are going to say good things about you, and give us their contact information so we can contact them. I'm like, well, I don't think so. I mean, maybe later in the process, but not right now. So that one's a weird one, but that one, I'm not going to give them referrals up front for nothing. I mean, that's like giving them leads for free. So in that situation, what if they make that mandatory? I mean, I literally just write like, references provided upon
request.
Yeah.
I mean, upon conclusion of interview process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
because we're requesting it right now. No, I get it.
He's all, do not request, or I shall request a second time. Yes.
The interesting thing was, though, I mean, in the vast number of final stage interviews, I won't say vast number. It makes me sound like, I've got problems. But in most of the final stage interviews I've been in, I hear from the recruiter, they say, can I get your references? Sure, here's my references. They say, we're not going to even call them. We just want to make sure that, you've got references that you can provide. Oh. Yeah, no problem. Because I contacted every one of them, gave them the rundown of what the role was and what areas I was wanting to emphasize. And yeah.
So do you want me to tell you the legal schmeal on that?
Yes, I do.
So basically, when you give a reference, technically the company can't call that other company and then ask about you and what it was like for you to work there and stuff like that. It's illegal to do that. The only thing that a company can legally do is verify that you work there from a time period to a time period under whatever title. That's all they can say.
Right.
If they say any more than that, if they say like, oh yeah, he was like sloughing off on the job and we canned him, like, whatever, then they could be in legal trouble. Yeah, liable, exactly.
But so what you're basically alluding to is that your references are sort of like the backdoor reference approach, where they'll automatically reach out and they're reading body language and they're looking at pauses when you ask a question or weird ticks when they ask specific questions to see if there might be something worth drilling down into, right?
Yeah. Now, do recruiters and sourcers do backdoor references?
Oh, yes.
All the time. All the time.
Mm-hmm.
But legally, like from an official standpoint, the only thing you can check is if they work there between this time and that time. That's all they can do.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So you finally get all that stuff entered. You deal with the ATS system, answer the questions, or you choose not to if they're ones that you are not comfortable answering. Yeah. And then you hit apply. So then what do you do after that?
You sweat and wait.
You kick back and count your applications. You're like, yes.
I'm rich in applications.
No. So again, follow up, right? Follow up, try and track. You can track down the recruiter. You can follow up with them. Say, hey, I applied. Just want to know what next steps might be. Now, keep in mind that poor recruiter is probably getting similar emails from bazillions of people, or they just didn't know that your resume was in there, or maybe they glossed over it, but then maybe they go back for a second look, and then they're like, oh, you know what? Actually, maybe we do want to talk to this person. So it's up to you to kind of weigh that balance. Is the table stakes for that are, you have to be a match for the job. Like it can't be one where you're like, just it's out there, right? It's like, you've got to be a match for the job. Otherwise, then it ruins the whole idea of this.
That makes sense. I applied to a role about a week ago, and I noticed on the role that it listed the hiring manager. The company is relatively large, but they listed the CMO as the hiring manager. And I'm like, wow. So I sent that CMO an email saying, hi, just wanted to reach out to you to introduce myself. I'm interested in applying to this role, but I wanted to touch base with you first because in a situation like this job where it's a multi-job, so it's PR and it's analyst relations, I wanted to clarify a couple of things about my experience because I am qualified for this role, but there may be a question as to whether I'd be able to do some of the older experienced things. And I wasn't this bulky, but I'm just kind of rounding out the email. I said, so I'm submitting my resume. Here's why I was a good fit for this role. I'd love to have a conversation with you to dig a little bit deeper into really some of the intangibles that you're looking for. Right. And she gets back to me the next day and says, hey, thanks for applying. Appreciate it. And I've just sent your resume over to the recruiter. Good luck.
Good luck. There you go. Well, you got to reply though. It worked.
Yeah, that reply resulted in exactly net zero of anything at this point, but we'll see.
But it did reply in like a good feeling though.
A good feeling. I mean, is the baseline and the bar set so low that any reply from a recruiter, sourcer, or a hiring manager is like, oh my God, I just hit the lottery?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's personal belief, I guess. So yeah, so that's basically it. So when you're applying, those are some of the things that you kind of deal with throughout the application process. And again, it's really dependent on the ATS system and how painful it is to apply. You already know. Another good thing for you to do, which we probably haven't talked about this, but it's a good idea to have like a running like plain text document of all the companies that you've applied to with the job title, with the username and password that you use for each, and the name of the ATS system.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
That's important. So have that handy so you can go back and track it, because you'll start to get confused as to what you've done.
That it's funny you say that, because I don't do that. I apply, I put my thinking into applying, and then I wait for the ATS system to say sorry. because my life has turned cynical now. It's like I'm submitting this for practice, and I'm assuming that the ATS is going to kick me back. And that doesn't mean I don't constantly revise my resume to make it more compelling, but it's become kind of the norm at this point. It's like, okay, thank you for applying. Unfortunately, we're moving forward with other candidates. So, it's one of those things.
Right. But it's a good idea to have it to keep track, because you may have to go back to kind of like retrace your steps, maybe for a role or whatever. Yeah.
That's a good bit of advice that I may end up taking at this point. But after 125 applications or so in the last, 6 months, yeah.
Yes. It's daunting out there, but we tell everyone to not lose hope.
Don't lose hope. No, don't do that. Because ultimately, when you look at this situation, this is but a blip on, the screen of your existence. And it's likely, 99.999, that's 5 9% likely not to kill you.
This is true.
I mean, that's the only thing I can tell you. It probably will not kill you.
So that's kind of like what we had for the job application kind of process. I don't think, we had anything else on that. Scott?
No, I think that this has been good and enlightening. I've encountered a lot of these things, and some of these things I haven't. So it was interesting to hear from the sourcer / recruiter kind of, we also look at these things. Okay, great. Good to know. So I guess that takes us to the end of this episode of the Recruiter of Oz podcast. One thing I would like to kind of tease, because it makes it more legitimate and Mark has to actually start thinking about it. I want to do a future episode focusing directly on first-time professional job seekers, those coming right out of college who may not have a lot of experience in the application process or working with recruiters, and really talk about some of the do's and don'ts for those people, because they may not know. It's not something that you really understand until you've experienced it a few times. So stay tuned for that in an upcoming episode. But for now, please like and subscribe. We very much appreciate those subscribing to this channel. And if you have any questions, look at that thing. What is that?
It's a purple squirrel.
Okay. I am totally sober. I was looking at that going, what? What am I looking at? All right, cool. So again, like and subscribe. And if you have questions, please communicate with us. We're more than happy to address any of those questions and the answers to those questions on a future episode, or directly to you in a message on either LinkedIn or via scott@arphilic.com, scott@arphilic.com. I haven't done that bumper for a while, so I figured it was time. So for today, have a great rest of your week, and good luck on your job search.
Yes. See you next time.
Bye-bye.